Welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Najuma Luima, but first, the headlines. Stop favoring Museveni, Africa judges tell security. Nigeria returns 3,000 displaced after jihadist violence. Botswana repatriating elephants to Angola. Kenya drops independent power producers to generate clean and cheap energy. Now the news in detail. Uganda has deported journalists attached to CBC News, a Canadian public broadcaster, who were in the country to cover the 2021 general election. The journalists include Margaret Evans, Lily Martin, and Jean-Francois Bisson, a videographer. Ms. Evans stated on her social media platform that they were arrested last week by Ugandan immigration officers and detained for 10 hours before being deported. The spokesperson, Ministry of Internal Affairs, Mr. Jacob Siminyu, yesterday declined to explain why the Canadian journalists were deported. President Museveni and some government officials have been alleging that some foreigners are helping or favoring the opposition for a regime change in Uganda. Mr. Museveni has repeatedly claimed that the National Unity Platform presidential candidate, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, aka Bobi Wine, is being supported by foreigners. He has not given evidence to prove his claim, which Bobi Wine has dismissed as a campaign gimmick. Moving on, African judges under their Professional Association of Africa Judges and Jurists Forum have castigated Ugandan security forces for disrupting the electoral process by attacking and blocking opposition candidates on the campaign trail. The judges say the police are favoring President Museveni as his campaign meetings are not violently dispersed, yet they also float COVID-19 guidelines and an excuse the security forces use to violently break up meetings of the opposition presidential candidate. They state that holding elections during the COVID-19 pandemic poses a health challenge, but nevertheless, any restrictions imposed to curb the spread should be applied to all candidates in equal manner. The opposition presidential candidates have repeatedly complained that COVID-19 restrictions are being applied selectively against them and not the campaign of President Museveni. Moving on to Nigeria, some 3,000 people began returning to their homes and deserted farms in the northeast Nigerian state of Borno on Monday, 6 years after fleeing jihadist violence and despite a weekend massacre that underscored the security risks they still face. Adding to their troubles, officials there warned of a looming food crisis caused at least in part by the deadly attacks on farm workers. They boarded dozens of trucks and buses at their camp in the state capital, Maiduguri, to travel some 130 kilometers to their home area of Mate, once considered the breadbasket of the Lake Chad region. The operation came after an attack on Saturday at Koshobe, where the attackers killed a dozen of rice farmers in one of the deadliest assaults. Moving on, Botswana says it is sending thousands of wild elephants back to neighboring Angola. The southern African country has the largest number of elephants in the world, an estimated 130,000 of them. But tens of thousands are actually refugees from Angola's civil war between 1975 and 2002. They are now expected to repopulate and recolonize their former habitat in southeast Angola. Botswana opposition MP and conservationist Goborego Nkawana told TV Africa that they have a big home range that includes Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, and Angola. In our business news today, Kenya dropped independent power producer as private project partners in geothermal power production due to their perceived sluggishness in supporting government efforts to generate clean and cheaper energy. Energy Cabinet Secretary Charles Keter told TV Africa that the government will instead work with the state-owned power producer KenGen in the second and third phases of the 465 megawatt geothermal power production at Menengai Geothermal Fields, about 185 kilometers northwest of capital Nairobi. The initial phase involves a generation of 105 megawatt of the geothermal power, while the second and third phases are expected to add 60 megawatt and 300 megawatt of renewable energy to the national grid, respectively. The policy shifts comes after the African Development Bank released an assessment report on the status of the Menengai Geothermal Development Power Project this month, showing that 3 IPPs, that is All Power 22 Limited, Quantum Power East Africa, and Socian Energy have delayed the production of cheaper energy by more than 2 years. Let's take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, the right to know. Now in our sports news today, the Hippos lead striker reveals his happiness after sealing a slot to play in the AFCON final set to be staged in Mauritania. Uganda striker Ivan Bogere has revealed his happiness at seeing the country book their place in the Under-20 AFCON finals. The Uganda Hippos floored Kenya Under-23 1 on Monday to reach the final of the Sekafa tournament being held in Tanzania. Goals from Bogere, who scored a brace, and Kenneth Semakura were enough to eliminate the Stanley Okumbi-led Chargers, who scored their consolation late into the game through Enoch Wanyama. Bogere, who features for Proline FC in Uganda, has now said it was always a dream for him to play in the biggest stage in his life and was happy to have sealed a place in the AFCON final. Now, before we end our news bulletin, let's take a recap of our top stories. Stop favoring Museveni, Africa judges tell security. Nigeria returns 3,000 displaced after jihadist violence. Botswana repatriating elephants to Angola. Kenya drops independent power producers to generate clean and cheap energy. That was the news on TV Africa. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. More programming coming your way.
This is Africa, and that was the news.